And this brings us maybe to a particularly sensitive and frankly troubling area that one of our sources touches on just briefly, the Great Replacement Theory. Could you maybe just outline what that is?
Sure. The Great Replacement Theory is, it's fundamentally a xenophobic and entirely baseless conspiracy theory. It falsely claims that there's some kind of deliberate effort underway, often blamed on non-white immigrants or minorities, to diminish or ultimately replace white populations and their culture in Western countries.
So it's rooted in fear and misinformation.
Completely. Our source points out that despite being based on misinformation, this theory can be very manipulative and persuasive for some, and it has genuinely dangerous real-world consequences, fueling hatred and sometimes violence.
Okay, so this theory is centered on a perceived threat to a specific racial group, white people suggesting their culture and population are under attack from the outside. How does this idea, which focuses on collective racial groups and perceived threats, contrast with the concept of transracialism we've been discussing, which seems much more about an individual's internal identity?
The contrast is really stark, isn't it? The Great Replacement Theory is fueled by fear, by prejudice, by this idea that racial groups are inherently separate, maybe even in competition. It's fundamentally about exclusion and maintaining a perceived racial hierarchy or homogeneity.
Right, maintaining boundaries.
Exactly. Whereas transracialism, at least in its focus on individual identity and a feeling of connection across those supposed racial boundaries, it doesn't necessarily engage with those same themes of societal power dynamics or group erasure in the same way. You could almost argue they're polar opposites in their underlying impulses.
One based on exclusion and fear of difference?
And the other, at least potentially, on individual identification and connection, however complex and controversial that connection might be.
It's striking how discussions around race can touch upon such drastically different, even opposing ideas. It really underscores just how charged and complex the whole topic is right now.
Absolutely. And our sources do remind us that this whole idea of race as these rigid, separate categories, it's actually a relatively recent development in human history.
Really?
Yeah, closely tied to European colonialism and the rise of white supremacy. Understanding that historical context is so crucial for understanding why these discussions about race, identity, even seemingly personal choices, can become so politically and emotionally loaded today.
Okay, so if we were to try and summarize why transracialism is such a lightning rod, based on everything we've looked at, what are the key reasons?
Well, pulling it together from the sources, it seems to be a confluence of factors. First, it fundamentally challenges our deeply ingrained social understanding of what race is.
Okay, challenges the status quo.
Right. Second, it raises those significant concerns we talked about regarding cultural appropriation and the potential, perceived or real, trivialization of the lived experiences of systemic racism.
The authenticity question.
Exactly. Which leads to the third point. Questions about the authenticity and motivations behind transracial identification. Accusations of deception or privilege often surface. Fourth, there's just a stark difference in the level of broad societal understanding and acceptance compared to, say, transgender identity, which has had a much longer and more developed public discourse, particularly around rights.
Right. The framing is different.
And finally, at its core, it seems to bump right up against the enduring significance of race as a category that has historically been and continues to be tied to systemic inequalities, power structures, and discrimination.
And the lived realities of individuals who cannot change how they are racially perceived, who face discrimination because of their race. That reality stands in really sharp contrast to the idea of choosing a racial identity.
That contrast seems central to the controversy, yes.
It definitely gives you, the listener, a lot to consider. How do our understandings of identity, especially around race and gender, continue to evolve in a world where these boundaries are being questioned more and more? Is this increasing focus on individual identity a kind of natural progression, a step forward? Or does it maybe risk overshadowing those crucial social and historical contexts that continue to shape all our realities?
These are really the essential questions we're left grappling with, aren't they? Our exploration of these sources, it reveals this incredibly wide spectrum of viewpoints. From those who see transracial identity as a genuine expression of self, to those who view it as deeply problematic cultural appropriation, or perhaps something else entirely.
It's definitely not simple.
Not at all. Ultimately, engaging with these different arguments, wrestling with the intricate issues they raise, it feels vital as we all continue to navigate this ever-changing landscape of identity and belonging in the world.